Hello, this is Miss Ron, aka the Icon. This is called Study with Me, part 5, I believe. This is part 5, and this is about the Joseph story, basically. We're gonna tell about the whole Joseph story. It's gonna be a nice long session. We're just gonna lead on to the Moses story for the next Study with Me. Sadie little brother Joseph. When Joseph arrives, his brother ripped off the beautiful robe he was wearing. Then they grabbed him and threw him into the cave. This Genesis chapter 37, verses 23 and 24. Jacob plays favorites with his dozen sons. Normally, it's the oldest son who gets special attention, and that would be Reuben, the son of Leah. But Jacob preferred the oldest son of his, dear Rachel, Joseph, number 11, in line of the dozen boys. Rachel had died en route to Canaan, while giving birth to her second son, Benjamin. So those two boys are all Jacob has to remember the only woman he truly loved. Joseph grows into a spoiled, braggadocious, tattletale teen, and his big brothers grow to hate him for it. A dream is what turns his brothers violent. Joseph, age 17, tells his family that he had a dream that the sun, moon, and 11 stars bow before him. Even old Jacob gets upset about that because he sees the symbolism. Well, your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow to the ground before you, Jacob scolded. Genesis chapter 37, verse 10. Soon afterward, perhaps within a few weeks, Jacob's 10 oldest sons are out grazing the sheep about 60 miles north of the Hebron home. That's about a hard 3-day walk. Jacob sends Joseph to check on them. So Joseph put on the beautiful robe his father has given him, and he headed out. Here comes the dreamer, one of the brothers said. They ripped off Joseph's robe and threw him into the dry desert, in the dry cave, which is a deep pit built to store water. While they argue over whether or not to kill him, a trader's caravan stopped. The caravan is headed to Egypt, and one of the merchants agreed to buy Joseph and sell him in Egypt as a slave. Selling price, 8 ounces of silver. And today's market, that's about $80 when silver sells for $10 an ounce. With Joseph gone, the brother smeared his torn robe in goat's blood. Then they take it home to tell their father they found it, convincing old Jacob that a wild animal ate his son. There's no consoling Jacob. The love of his life is gone, and so is her first son. Okay, Daddy is my grandpa. Judah is one of Jacob's dozen sons. Father twin boys with his daughter-in-law. That's fucked up. In fairness to Judith, he thought she was a prostitute. The woman's name was Tamar. She married Judah's son, Or, but he died before the couple had any children. Custom called for Or's brother to marry the widow. That way, Tamar could have a son in Or's name and inherit Or's property. Women couldn't inherit property since they were property. Younger brother Onan married Tamar and had sex with her, but he refused to release the semen inside of her. He wanted his children to inherit all the property, for that God killed them. With 2 sons down, Judah refused to give Tamar his next son, Shelah. So Tamar, dressed as a prostitute, covered her face with a veil and put herself in Judah's path. He positioned her, had sex with her, and gave her his walking stick as collateral for payment. She kept the stick, which turned out to be a good thing for her. When Judah found out Tamar was pregnant, he ordered her burned to death. Man, they be hard in the Old Testament. Burned to death? That's when she brought out the walking stick. Humiliated. Joseph replied, "She is more righteous than I am because I didn't arrange for her to marry my son Shelah." That's Genesis chapter 38, verse 26. Tamar's twins, Perzaz and Zerah, became the legal sons of Ur. Judah never slept with Tamar again. I mean, that's kind of crazy. That is kind of crazy. Okay, bowing to Joseph. Since Joseph was governor of all Egypt, in charge of sending grain to all the people, it was to him that his brothers came. When they arrived, they bowed before him and with their faces to the ground. From a slave to a ruler, Joseph stepped into high society Joseph stepped into high society is one that his brothers never anticipated. Joseph began his life in Egypt as a household slave and for Potiphar, captain of the palace guard. Potiphar takes a liking to the hard-working boy and eventually put him in charge of all his household affairs. Potiphar's wife takes a liking to the handsome boy as well, and she wants to become one of those household affairs. Sexual harassment continued day after day. It finally ends when Potiphar's wife grabs Joseph's cloak one day and says, "Come and sleep with me." Genesis chapter 39, verse 7. Joseph sprints away, leaving her holding the cloak. Furious, she screams rape. This acts like a triumph call that rallies all the servants and reins of her blast. Potiphar apparently doubts her story about a good-looking, well-built teenager who wants her body. Law allows a slave owner to instantly execute a violent slave. Instead, Potiphar just sends Joseph to prison. That's a good thing for Joseph. There he interprets dreams of two of the king's recently jailed servants, collectively predicting what will happen to the men. The baker is executed. The wine server gets his job back. 2 years later, the king has some troubling dreams. The wine server tells him about Joseph. In one dream, 7 starving cows eat 7 fat cows. In another, 7 withered hands of grain gobbled up 7 plump grain heads. The next 7 years will be a period of great prosperity throughout the land of Egypt. Joseph tells the king, interpreted the dream, but afterward there will be a 7-year famine, so great that all the prosperity will be forgotten in Egypt. Famine will destroy the land. Genesis 41, chapter 29 to 30. The king not only believes Joseph's interpretation, he believes God has given Joseph special insight and wisdom. So he puts Joseph in charge of managing the grain reserved to get the nation through the coming famine. Drought spreads at least as far north as modern-day Israel. There, elderly Jacob hears about the grain reserves in Egypt. So he sends his 10 oldest sons to Bashan. He keeps with him Benjamin, which is all he has up to remind him of Rachel. I said April, Rachel. The 10 men bowed before their brother, who's about 20 years older than when they saw him last. They didn't recognize him, but he recognizes them, and he has a scheme to see if they regret what they did to him. "You are spies," he tells them, and he orders them to bring their younger brother Benjamin before him to prove they're lying about who they are. In the meantime, Joseph holds one of his brother's horses. is Simon, the second oldest. Perhaps Joseph skipped Reuben, the oldest, because it was Reuben who taught the others out of killing Joseph on the day slave traders bought him. With Joseph listening, the brothers admit they're getting what they deserve. Clearly, we are being punished because of what we did to Joseph long ago. They said, we saw his angers when he pleaded for his life, but we wouldn't listen. That's why we're in this trouble. Genesis 42, chapter 21. Joseph weeps, realizing they're sorry for what they had done. The men returned to Canaan. But old Jacob refuses to let Benjamin go. He holds out as long as he can until the family needs more grain. He reluctantly sends all his sons to Egypt, including Benjamin. Joseph's family reunion. Hurry back to my father and tell him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me master over all the land of Egypt. So come down to me, or come down to me immediately. You can live in the region of Goshen, where you can be near me with all your children and your grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and everything you own. Genesis chapter 45, 9 to 10, verses 9 to 10. With his brothers again at his mercy, Joseph concocts one more test. He loads them up. He loads them up with grain. Then he has a servant stuff one of his silver cups into Benjamin's sack. Later, Joseph arrests Benjamin for stealing. Joseph wants to see if the older brothers will abandon their little brother, just as they had once done to him. But the brothers pleaded for Benjamin. Judah confesses what they had done to Benjamin's brother and how it broke their father's heart. It was Judah who talked the brothers into selling Joseph as a slave master. It's always a Judah. It never fails. It's always a Judah. Right? Judah's always betraying somebody. But now it's Judah who offers to take Benjamin's place and stay in Egypt as a slave. Joseph can't hold back the surge of emotion any longer. I am Joseph, he cries, as my father still alive. Is my father still alive? Stunned, silent, the older brothers expect retaliation. Instead, they get forgiveness. Don't be upset. Don't be angry with yourself for sending me to this place. Joseph assured them, it was God who sent me here, ahead of you, to preserve your lives. Genesis chapter 45, verse 5. With the king's blessing, Joseph invites his entire extended family to move down to the land lush Goshen grassland of northern Egypt to weather out the remaining 5 years of the famine. Jacob, ecstatic at discovering his son is still alive, happily agrees. And the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, all 70 of them, moved to Egypt. See, the next chapter is going to be Exodus. Thank you for come study for me for 14 minutes. If you like this video, like, share, subscribe. God love you, Jesus love you, and I love you. And have a blessed day. March 17th.